Hi, and welcome back to Book Banter. Jen Craven writes stories where one decision changes everything. Her books feature emotionally charged, page turning plots and characters who are faced with impossible choices. In her latest novel, The Skiers, Jen takes us into the world of women's professional water skiing, where secrets, lies, and plot twists simmer just beneath the water's edge. Let's welcome Jen back to Book Banter.
Hello. Thank you for having
Hello.
me again.
We are so happy to have you because The Skiers is such a fantastic read.
Thank you.
I loved it. It was just so immersive, but also educating because I didn't know the world of water skiing, professional water skiing, actually
Mhm.
any water skiing at all. But
Mhm.
it's absolutely brilliant. So everybody should just be running to their online store right now and adding it to cart
Thank
before
you.
we dive
Well,
in.
I'm
It's
I'm
so good.
excited to chat all about it.
It's really, really good. I just loved it, and I have to know, where did the idea come from to dive into the world of women's professional water skiing?
Yeah, it is definitely a niche sport, one that not a lot of people know about. They think of skiing maybe as like a hobby or a summertime thing you do with friends, if even that. But there is this world of professional athletes that are incredibly talented and travel the world on the skiing circuit and compete in these events, and it's really quite incredible. So
Yeah.
I guess my link to it is certainly not in the professional sense, but I did grow up on a lake and my dad had a boat. So we were the boating family, and I've learned how to ski when I was a very young child. So I've always had that sort of lake life in my blood. And I, in terms of like the book idea though, I really can't pinpoint where it came from, aside from just thinking that I wanted to do something a little bit different with this book compared to my previous ones. So we can talk a little bit about that too. But so between that and then my experience growing up and all, it just kind of, the idea just kind of came to me, and then it kind of just like snowballed, and I was like, okay, I really see where this is going, and I think it could be really cool.
It is actually impressive to sometimes you don't know, right? Sometimes you don't know where it literally sparks, but
Mhm.
it's that loop that plays in your head, and you start to know characters or a setting or something
Mhm.
that just keeps you going. And
Yeah, for this one, I got the idea of just like the two female skiers who were the two main protagonists, and they are rivals, but they started out as childhood friends.
I
So
love that.
just kind of like, how does that happen? How do you go
Yeah.
from friends to rivals? And it's that line between friends and frenemies,
Yeah.
and how far you're willing to go to reach the top and beat that person. And so just so many dynamics that I was able to
It's
explore.
it's so true. It actually hits very on point for that kind of world when you think about gymnasts or like any kind of women's professional sport. The likelihood of children growing up and
Yeah.
becoming competitors is very real.
Yes, and I do love to read these types of stories. So if any of your listeners are familiar with what I'm calling some of my comp titles for this book, if you read Carrie Soto, if you read
Yeah.
Girls and Their Horses, or any of like the books that are centered in ballet or
Yes.
gymnastics or things like that, where it's sort of like a niche sport, high pressure,
Yeah.
and like you said, with these athletes that are together all the time and traveling and competing against each other. It's not really like a team sport. It's like an
No.
individual sport. So that makes it really unique.
It does. It creates a really interesting dynamic and a great story structure. Like, I don't think I'd want to live it, but it's a really
Right.
great story structure.
Yes.
So, and the skiers it's brilliant and it's a page turner, but it's a little bit different from your other novels. Like
Mhm.
Her Daughter, for example, is like my heart was in my throat the whole time I was reading it. It might be because of the topic,
Mhm.
right? It hits home if you're a mom, and that what if scenario. But the skiers seem to burn a little bit slower, which is,
Mhm.
I love that because I love a slow burn. Um, but it dug deeper into the intricacies of that complicated female relationship. And I'm wondering if you approached writing this novel a little bit differently than you've approached some of your other novels.
Honestly, I think it was really refreshing to write this one because, like I said, my previous 3 novels that came out right before this one, while they're all unique in their stories, they're very similar in genre, in that domestic suspense, centering around a family or motherhood, very strong motherhood themes in a lot of my books, which I love. I love writing that. And I think I was just ready to kind of have a small departure and try something a little bit different. So while they all still have like the element of suspense and, you know, kind of the page turner aspect, that sort of thing, this one was really focused on like the rivalry between the women, the friendship, and my characters in this one are a bit younger than a lot of my other protagonists. So
that's true.
In a lot of my stories, I'm writing usually women in their 40s, you know, average, give or take. And these are like late 20-something women. So a different phase of life. And so it was very nice to kind of try something new. And I enjoyed it a lot.
I bet. It's always nice to have like a clean sheet, right? Where you can just explore something different, stretch your wings a bit. You did it well. So
thank you.
Good job. That's the brilliant thing about it. Like it's not different enough that it wouldn't appeal to the readers of Her Daughter or your others, right?
Yes.
Best Years of Your Life is still, I love that book.
Thank you. It is one of my favorites as well.
I go back to it in my head all the time, and that's always an indicator for me that those people have stuck with me. So
that means thank you.
It's a great one. Everybody should just like go search Jen Craven and then add all of the books to cart. That's what you should do. But when we're talking about the skiers, we get into the families. And this was really interesting for me because every single family member is very three-dimensional. They're fully fleshed out. They have their own story trajectory, and they play their own role in making the girls become who they are. And I'm wondering, when you write your supporting characters, do you find yourself giving them as much attention as you do your protagonists?
I think you kind of have to, even if it doesn't end up on the page. I think for the author, it needs to be there, because you can't write someone without knowing where they come from, who are their parents, all of that. So it's like a full-fleshed, you know, character profile in your head, even if only small parts reach the actual book. So I really wanted to know who the moms were, or the mother figures. The grandfather plays a huge role, obviously, in this book. So I liked the idea that the 2 protagonists, the 2 competitors, would kind of have different backgrounds. So the one sort of comes from a privileged legacy sort of family where there's sort of like a dynasty in the ski world. And then this other one has a more difficult upbringing and challenges. She's sort of like the underdog. So again, I wanted them, there's not one that's better than the other, or one that I'm hoping readers root for more than the other. I really tried to show, I really tried to show like both of their flaws and strengths, and just very like make it very human. So you really are rooting for both, you know, the whole book, and wondering like how it's going to end.
That is exactly it. You root for both, and you don't want to see either one fail. And yet I love the evolution of the character, because then the reader is able to shift what they're rooting for the individual character. I don't want to give anything away, but it's
and there was times when I was writing when it was feeling a little lopsided, where it was feeling like one of those characters was turning more into like the villain versus the other. And I had to go back and finesse that, because I didn't want it to be that way. You know, obviously once you read and you get to the end and you know what happens, then there is sort of like your villain character, I guess you could say. But along the way, I didn't want it to be
and you did a really good job with that, because it was equal for me reading who was gonna, and I could feel for both of them independently. And it's kind of that saying of, 2 things can be true at the same time.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that was really, really well done. I love that actually, because they have a natural trajectory of growth as young women.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's hard to, portray in 300 pages.
Yes.
And because, a character needs to do a lot of growing, but as they're growing from children to young adults, that's a huge transformation. So,
Right.
yeah, you got inside my head, that's for sure. I don't know if you want to be there or not, but well, one of the things that I really appreciated as a reader was your ability to weave the different points of view without spelling it out for us. So we didn't have a heading that said this date and this person talking. And that is a skill in itself. I know in historical fiction, we rely a lot on that date stamp at the top. If you're doing dual point of view, for sure, because you're flipping back and forth and things change. But this was actually very masterful. And I wondered, personally, actually, and I don't know if anybody else wonders this, but I wondered when I was reading it, if that skill set was something that you've grown into as an author, or is it something that you actually set out to do specifically with this novel?
So I think both. I did set out to do it with this novel. This was my first attempt at kind of like an omniscient narrator, which is like that sky high level view down on everything, kind of like you can see into everyone's heads. I've definitely done dual POV story, almost, I think pretty much all my stories are dual POV. But I usually do the chapter headings, like you said, where you know whose head you're in. You say the character's name at the beginning of the chapter. And this time I wanted to just kind of like make it a little more smooth and see if I could sort of tap into that omniscient a little bit. If we do hop into someone else's head, there's like a paragraph break within the chapters. So that was new for me this time. And there was definitely some revision that went in and editing where I was kind of like, okay, I got to make sure that's clear so we're not getting confused. But yeah, so it was the first time for this for me.
It's really interesting because that omniscient view is like, that's like a high bar in authorland because you want it to be so integrated into the story and the characters without feeling like, this otherworldly voice. So it was very, I noticed it because I was like, oh, this is new.
Yes, thank you. Well, that really means a lot. When I first started drafting the skiers, I had just read Beartown by Frederick Backman.
Okay.
And that I think is maybe kind of like part of the inspiration or it just got me thinking of just that narrative style because that's kind of like how he wrote those books. And not that I'm comparing myself to Frederick Backman on any level whatsoever.
Well, I don't know.
I read
you
that.
Could.
And it's a hockey book. And so it just like, it kind of felt like it fit a little. And I was like, let's see if I can do something like that.
That's pretty cool. I love that because that is, you literally spread your wings on so many different aspects in writing the skiers. And that is taking a big chunk out of.
Yeah. I do feel like I grew a lot as a writer through this book. For sure.
Well, it's interesting too, because the first person I thought of was Tracy Lang's books in how she transitions through a very big cast of characters.
Yes.
And I'm like, that is so clever. I love how she does that.
Yeah, she's a master at that.
Right? Like it's, and you have to break some of the rules, so to speak, in order to do stuff like that. But when it works really, really well. And probably a lot of readers wouldn't catch it, but they are grounded throughout the whole story, knowing whose perspective.
Yeah, right. Yep.
So I loved it. I thought it was really, really well done. So I'm not sure I could do it, but I like that you did it.
Maybe you could challenge yourself to give it a try someday.
We'll see. I'll be calling you. So taking the perspective of, I can't read. I don't have my glasses on, friends. So try again. Tackling the perspective of a professional sport is quite a task as an author. what were your greatest challenges when it came to writing the story? And then what were your greatest rewards?
So challenges, I would say, is that I live nowhere near professional water skiing. So it's not like I could go just,
What?
randomly go watch a bunch of stuff live or whatever. I relied
Right.
really heavily on YouTube videos. Just we're so blessed now to have the technology at our
Yes.
fingertips, like to be,
Yeah,
able to watch things and follow
totally.
people on Instagram. So I followed all kinds of skiers and reached out to a bunch of them. One in particular was really great at answering questions for me and reading the manuscript early, which was
Oh,
incredible.
huge.
So I was very, very blessed for that. And but challenges, yeah, probably just the lack of that firsthand maybe sort of experience. I got the best
Mhm.
secondhand experience I possibly could to write it and wanted to make it as accurate as possible. Now, granted, it is fiction. And so
Yes.
even the skiers who have read the book have said, like, we get it, like you have dramatized this for the sake of fiction, which is
Sure.
exactly true,
Yeah. Meant
So
to entertain.
exactly. So
Yeah.
for entertainment purposes. But the biggest reward, I would say, is just the reception that I have received from the professional skiing
Oh,
community. And they've been great. Many skiers have read the book. I've sent them all early
nice.
copies. And in fact, my husband and I are taking a little trip to Florida in a couple weeks, and we're going to go to an event. So,
Really?
yes,
Oh,
and
that's fun.
I'll be able to set up a table and have some books and just meet some of these people and watch. And so I'm really, really excited.
That is really cool. That'll be a really good experience
Hmm.
because it's for me as a reader and not knowing anything about water skiing, I knew that I was immersed in the lake life. I was
Yes.
immersed in like I could see what the race scenario looked like. And I mean, I've been around sport a lot
Sure.
in my life, but it's at the same time it was there's an energy, there's an undercurrent of energy that runs through a crowd and athletes and coaches and
Definitely.
everybody, right? As things
Yeah.
are kicking off. And you really captured that. And so I think that that's part of it is that just under the surface. But then you throw in all the secrets,
Oh, yes. Lots of
all the secrets.
it wouldn't be a Jen Craven book unless there was a lot of secrets.
And okay, so I'm not going to give away any spoilers because
Mm-mm.
you really need to read this and you have to be a little bit patient, but you get a little nugget along the way. And I love that. But for me, I was like, how did you keep track of the secrets? There were
Well,
so
I
many.
knew, yeah, I knew I wanted each of the two women to have like a big one. So they each have a pretty big secret, and
Yeah.
those, like you said, unfold as the novel goes along. But there's smaller ones too. There's lots of different
Yes.
things, and it's not a dual timeline novel, but there are
Mm.
flashbacks.
Yeah.
And so and several flashbacks. Like you could flash back to those girls' childhoods and even further
Yeah.
back to like their parents and their grandparents' childhood. So
Yeah.
everyone has something that sort of shaped who they are now,
Yeah.
and that they either don't want to come to light or are trying to keep hidden. So yeah,
It's
and then they use it against each other.
they do. Like, yeah, at every turn.
Yeah, a little bit of sabotage, a little bit of
Yeah.
a little bit of threatening blackmail, but you know what? That's what makes for entertaining books, my friends.
It does. It really does. It does because they're morally questionable,
Yes.
but it stretches a reader's mind too to go, "Ooh, would I do that?" Or,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
I think that's why we read is
Yeah.
to experience others' lives without
Yes.
the actual pain of their life.
And I always say too, I don't think every character needs to be likable necessarily. I think they need to be understandable. So I think
Yes.
you need to, even if you don't particularly like a character or think like, oh, I don't like what she just did, or I wouldn't have done
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
you understand why they're doing it based on their life and what brought them to this point.
I totally agree. I actually really like an unlikable character, as sad as that is, uh, because they hold a mirror up to you as a reader. And,
Yeah.
We sort of benchmark our own value, decisions, worth, thoughts, everything like that against those fictional situations, because we never know, like when you look at the news or the, social posts or anything, you don't really know the full story of anything.
Right.
But when you have a novel that is basically telling you where people came from or how they came to be who they are, a negative character or not, you understand them, like you said.
Yeah.
And that's all you need.
Yeah.
And it's always interesting to me when there's a negative character that readers really love. And I always go, oh, why? Why is that?
Yeah.
What about humanity makes us really, really love that negative character?
Who knows?
It's kind of fun, though.
Yeah.
So what are you working on now, or what's coming up next? Do we have something new to look
Oh,
forward
yes.
to?
So my next book will come out in September, and it is it's complete. It's, going through final proofreading and all that
Nice.
sort of stuff. So I should have a cover reveal this summer. But I can share the title. It's called She's Not Yours.
Ooh.
It's another domestic suspense, and it is more like situated around a family, and there's a big secret, of course. So that'll be coming out in September, and I'm currently drafting a story that will come out next spring.
Wow, you're so busy. You're really prolific, which is excellent. I love that, because it just means we have more books to read. So that's a good thing. That's really cool. I like that title too.
She's Not Yours.
Yeah.
It could be interpreted a few different ways.
I'm already going, is it an adult? Is it a child? Is it
So stay tuned.
Absolutely. That's September.
Yes.
Cool. Okay. We will be watching for that. You're going to put up your Instagram. You're going to want to follow Jen on Instagram to see the cover reveal and more information about that September release as well. So let's talk TBR piles. Like, you are a voracious reader.
Yes.
And you read a lot. I don't know how you read so much. It's amazing. And we love to grow our TBR piles. So if you could only recommend one book, I know it's like picking your favorite child, what would it be?
My most favorite recent book that I read was Broken Country by Claire Leslie Hall. I just read it, I think, last month, and loved it. It was right up my alley, the exact type of book that I love. So if any of your listeners read The Paper Palace, which was a big hit a year or two ago, maybe 2 years ago, it's very sort of on brand with that. And so that was one of my favorites then. So it's no surprise that I also love this one.
Same author?
No, two different authors.
Okay.
Yeah, no, two different authors, just kind of similar in style, and yeah.
Okay. That is on my list. In fact, I am on the holds list for like almost 30 weeks.
Oh, yeah. It's very, very popular. It was one of the book clubs. I'm not sure if it was, I think it's Reese. I think it was a Reese pick. One of the celebrity book clubs. And I don't necessarily always agree with the celeb book club picks, but this one I loved.
Interesting. Although I think James was an Oprah book club pick too.
Yeah, that could have been more than one. That was a really great,
Wasn't
that
you
a told me only one, Tanya, so I only listed
sorry. So I should let everybody know that I get most of my recommendations from Jen's Instagram. I go, oh, she said that, I'm gonna go grab that one.
Yeah.
Because usually I've seen them and they piqued my interest, but I haven't like pulled the trigger on it yet. So
yeah, sure. I mean, I do that too. I think, unless it's like all over the internet or something, and it's getting a lot of hype, then you go with one or two people that you trust with their reading picks, and I pick a lot of books that way too.
Yeah, I follow yours.
Well, good. I hope I don't lead you astray.
You haven't yet.
Okay.
I mean, you hit batting 100 so far. So lastly, what book is currently on your bedside table? If there is only one, if there's three, like mine, go ahead and tell them all.
Yes. So I'm currently reading The Strange Case of Jane O.
Oh.
And this is a new release from Karen Thompson Walker, and I read her The Age of Miracles last
Oh,
year
okay.
and really enjoyed it. She has a really unique style and tackles some really interesting topics that are always a little bit um, like sort of little magical realism, a little bit, which
Oh,
is kind of
yeah.
different for me. That's not usually something I pick, but it's not too far out there that,
Yeah.
that it's not like sci-fi or anything like that.
Yeah.
But so this one's really interesting. A woman gets sort of a case of amnesia, but then there's a lot
Ah,
more to it. So I'm about halfway through
okay.
that and enjoying that one. And then I always have some sort of self-help parenting book on my nightstand. So
Right.
I'm raising 3 kids and one almost teenager. So
Yeah.
I'm very heavily into those types of books.
Yeah. You need all the help you can get.
Yes, yes, I do. I'm open to recommendations.
Yes. Well, your son isn't quite old enough yet, but there's a great book, and I will have to get it to you
Okay.
about boys,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's
Definitely.
basically like the walking the path with boys kind of thing.
Oh, yes.
It's a Canadian author, actually lives in our neighborhood somewhere.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, but it was like light bulb moments for me where I was like, okay, if you want to get your son talking, go
Mm,
walking because
I
their
love that.
brain goes left to right, left to right, left
Yeah.
to right. And if they don't have to look at you, they can talk.
Yes. Yes. That's so funny. So
So
yeah, I'm usually balancing a fiction, a nonfiction, something like that. An audiobook, a
I was
physical
just going to
book.
ask if you did audio. You do?
I do audio a lot on my walks and runs and
Yeah.
so forth. Right now on audio, I'm listening to Show Don't Tell, Curtis Sittenfeld's new one.
Oh,
It's a collection of
okay.
stories,
Oh,
which is kind
cool.
of nice for a walk because they're, if it's like a rough 45 minute, chapter in the book, then it's like
Yeah.
a perfect for a walk.
That makes sense, actually.
Mhm.
I like
Yeah.
those shorter ones too for
Mhm.
those, because I usually listen to audiobook while I'm cooking or
Yes.
cleaning or,
Yeah,
something like
absolutely.
that. Don't go on many long drives anymore. So, well, this has been really, really fun, and I am so glad that we were able to talk about the skiers because I really encourage friends, you need to go out and grab this book as well as Jen's other if you haven't read. You've got what, 5 novels out now? Is that
I
right?
have 5 that are in my sort of contemporary, the domestic suspense ones. I started out in historical. I had 2 historical fiction
That's
novels
right.
first.
Yes.
But yes, before shifting into where I'm currently writing. So The Skiers
Yeah.
was technically my 7th.
It was your 7th. Wow. Look at you go. I love that. So you should really just go and type in Jen Craven in the search bar and you will find all of her novels there. So I can tell you this much. Once you read one, you won't be able to stop. So thanks so much, Jen, for joining us.
Thank you again for having me. I always love chatting. And it's great to see you.
You as well. Until next time, friends, happy reading. Thanks for watching, and be sure to check out my author notes playlist, where I give you quick insights into my books, characters, and the writing life. Happy reading!